Hello out there. I know I said in the the last video it was going to be the last one for this story. Um, if if you saw the video I made for the cover, um, but I kind of decided this one would be more of a how-to than than sort of a fun conversation with you guys. It's I don't know if any of you out there have been watching these and have kind of gotten the idea to do your own stories. But if you had, I kind of want to show you how, I guess, easy it is to take all those pages and put them together into a Kindle book for, sale on Amazon. You basically, if you do want to try and see if anybody out there is interested in your stuff and you kind of want to try and make a little bit of money off it, Amazon's a real easy platform for it. Just make sure you don't go violating their terms of service, or they'll bitch like they did when I tried to put Transforming Tyler up there. Um, but anyway, you know what? Once you've got your pages, what you're going to do is go to Amazon's site and download their Kindle Comic Creator. And then once you install that and open it, we're going to click create a new book, and it's going to bring up this window. And before it'll let you go on, you have to choose the language because it just won't default to English. And if you're if you're creating in another language, it won't remember your setting for the next time. Um, and then it'll open up the other options. Would you like to create Kindle panel view? I'll select yes, even though it actually won't create Kindle panel view when I go on, but I'll just leave it checked anyway. What is the orientation of your book? These pages are portrait. If you're doing sort of a picture book where the pages are longer than they are tall, then you're going to want to go landscape. But we're doing a traditional book, so we're going portrait. And what is the page turn direction of your book? And for this project, we're going left to right. And then what is the canvas size of your book? Original resolution. In some of the stories, I have sort of changed this about, but most of the time I just leave it on the default 800 by 1280. Can't it's if I remember correctly, this is the minimum. You can't go smaller than this, but you can go bigger. But I'm just going to leave that alone. We'll go continue. And now it'll bring up this screen, the metadata. So title, I'm going to call this the Iron, Brotherhood. Oh, it won't, some characters it won't let me enter, like the colon, for instance. So we're just going to ignore the colon and go Rusty. And let's see, will it give me the and? Yes. And Elliot. Author, we will put Reddington. Publisher, I can leave blank. If you decide to create your own little publishing label, you can go and enter that there. I think I toyed with the idea of sort of shifting to operating under Reddington Studios, but it never worked. And you'll need a cover image. Now note those fields marked with asterisks are required, so we need to put a cover image. I'll click browse, and basically it defaults to the last book you were doing, which was A New Sort of Diet. So I've got to come back out and find the Iron Brotherhood, then the Rusty and Elliot folder, and here's the cover I created. And then it asks you, where do you want to save your new book? And it always defaults on the document folder. So I'm going to change that. Studio Render Library. In here, I created a new folder labeled just simply book for the Kindle book. So I'm going to select that. And you don't really need advanced settings. So we'll just start adding pages. And again, because it's defaulting on the last one, so we've got to sort of redirect it to you. And we select book 1, grab our pages, and here's all the pages starting with the cover and then 24. We just select them all and go open, and it'll import them all. Now, what I've found, for some reason, this program loves to crash when I add pages. So every time I add a bunch of pages, I will save it. And when it flashes like that, then I know it's saved. And then I'll go adding the next batch. Add pages. So we come out, go to book 2, pages, and we add them, open, and then I will save. Chances are this is where it's going to crash. So let's see, add pages. We come out, go to book 3, select all of them, and go open. Okay, so far it hasn't crashed. Keep our fingers crossed. Let's save. And file, add pages. Come out. Now, see, this is why I always number them page 01, 01, 02, 03, so that numerically the file system will keep them in proper order when they're ordered by file name. And that kind of helps I think that keeps them in order when I import them in here. So we just go select those and add them. And let's file save that. See, and there we crashed. Okay, so there it just crashed, so we'll open it again. I'll open existing book. Where am I? Let's zoom out. Rusty and Elliot book, and we want content. And okay, because I saved it saved before it crashed, so I've got all 100 pages in here. From here on out, there shouldn't be any problems with it crashing, but I'll save it frequently anyway, because you never know, and it's always better to save it. So now what we want to do is, as you can see, oh, Jesus Christ, and there it just crashed again. See, I guess we are going to have problems, but so unless you know what you're looking for, it hasn't actually created any panels like we told it to in the initial settings. So what we'll go do is come to this and I'll right click and I will go detect panels and we will detect in all pages. And it'll ask you, detecting panels will remove all existing Kindle panels across the book. Do you wish to proceed? Okay. And it's creating panels. Now we're going to save because I don't want to lose the panels. There we go. And as you can see, it's created this green border around the image. If I go here, it's created around each of the boxes. Those are the panels. And what I'm going to do is the CSS. I'm going to zoom to 75, so I've got a bigger image. If I want the whole thing, I go to 50, but it makes the text a little on the small side. So I keep 75 is, for me, is the compromise between having the page small enough on the screen to work with and the menu big enough to see. And then, once we have it detected all the panels on the pages, then we go through and adjust page by page, panel by panel. So you can see. So if you've seen my stories or any comic on your Amazon Kindle, you know that if you double click on the image, it'll zoom in, and then double click will zoom out. So let's go back to page 2. If we take, let's say, a smaller panel, we double click on that, it'll zoom in and show me the panel. And where we have to adjust is, even though the box is where we want it, for some reason that's not where. For some reason the box is off in reality. So, basically to make sure that, when I've got a box that's where it needs to be, to make sure that it actually expands that area, I'll just kind of left click on the box somewhere and just move it a little bit. Just make a little tiny adjustment. It doesn't need to be big. So when I double click, now I've got the space. And I've got to do that through each and every one of these pages. So let's start on the first cover, the interior cover here. We just move it slightly and then come over here. And now we come into this page. Basically, the idea of the panels is because I want to expand the image and the text so you guys can see it better on either on your computer like I use, or if you've got a Kindle tablet to make it bigger. But I think it detects the panels based on the white space. So while it's nice to have the panel created like this, I really want to split this up so that this text box here is one panel, and then this side of the image will get the other one. So what I'm going to do is grab the corner when I've got the little sideways arrows, the diagonal arrows like that, as opposed to like this little plus sign. I get the little diagonal arrows. I'll left click and hold, and then pull the border in. This side, left click and hold, and pull it in. And then that's the panel. Problem is that doesn't expand it all that much. When you let it detect the panels, Let me right click on the panel, and then I get these options: set zoom level. So when it detects the panels, it sets the zoom level automatically. So these panels that run all the way from one side to the other, it will set the magnification level at 101. So because I want this to go bigger, we'll select this one, which magnifies it to 150. You can go to 250, but as you can see, that's too much magnification. Also, what you can do is you can set a custom level. So this one was 150 and this one's 250, I can go 200 and put it in between if I wanted to. So you can set the zoom level however you want, but I'll just always default to 150. That way I generally don't have to guess if like one panel it's going to zoom in too much, one not enough. 150 sort of sets a standard across the page. Now, since I took this panel away and condensed it to this, I need another panel here, which I don't have. So I'm going to right click and bring up the menu, and I'm going to go a new Kindle panel. Instead of detect panels, I'm going to go a new Kindle panel, and it gives me this thing. And then I just resize that to encompass what I want. So I've got that panel, and when I create a new panel, the default zoom level is 150 where I want it to be. So when I create a new panel, I won't have to change the zoom level. So then, like I said, all these panels down here are where I want them to, but they're not gonna go right. So we just need to make a small adjustment to get it to recognize the border. And now, as you'll notice, the panels are all numbered. That's because, let me see if it'll do it here. In your Kindle, it won't do it here, okay, but when you click on the panel in your Kindle, you can use the scroll button on your mouse to just move from one to the next. So instead of, when you're on your Kindle, instead of double clicking on this one and then double click zooming out to zoom in on this one, instead of doing this, the scroll button, when you're opened in the Kindle app, you can use the scroll button to just move from one panel to the other without having to zoom in and out. And that's what these numbers are, this is the order that they will scroll. So as it stands, if I were to save this and open it on the Kindle, it would scroll from this panel to this panel to this panel to this panel to this panel, and then to this panel, number 6. But I don't want that. So I've got to go over here to Panel Manager and just left click to grab it and hold it. Left click and hold to grab it and then move it up. And then put it in the second position. Now the number changes. It's now panel number 2. So that this is the order that it'll scroll on your Kindle. I'm going to save that. And then let's go to page number 3. Now, one thing I run into, because I love to have the text bubbles sort of bridge the panels, is that when it detects the panels, it won't detect these as two separate panels. So I've just got to resize this and let's zoom 150. And one thing I got to do is just make sure that this panel isn't too big to zoom in at 150. It just barely makes it, so I'm going to leave it. And then I need to left click to create a new panel here. And I'll just resize that and put it around this one. So I get that. At the end of the day, the panels don't need to be pretty. So, you don't really need to worry that there's like half this text bubble zooming in. The intention is just to make sure that people can read the text on a small device or see the picture on a small device. If they want to see the overall whatever, you can zoom out and see the whole page as it's meant to be seen. Now when it's crying warning on these two panels because they're overlapping. For some reason, the Kindle Comic creator gets upset if panels overlap each other, but there's no ill effect from it happening. So, nothing is going to go wrong because these panels are overlapping. It's not going to ruin the reader's experience. It's not going to crash your program because they're overlapping. There's no consequence to them overlapping, but Kindle Comic creator loves to cry anyway. So you'll see a lot of these warnings pop up because I just don't care. They don't mean anything. So I'm going to move my new panel up to number 2. And then here we go more. So what I'm going to do is resize panel 3, and then I've got to set zoom level. I'm going to create a panel here. And now while I could expand it like this is going to be one of those cases where I end up splitting it a little bit more. So we're going to put the panel on their faces and then make a panel just for this text box. Whoops, I didn't want it. So now I got to bring number 6 up and make this number 4. Oops. Okay, we're going to have to do this bit by bit here. And number 7 has to be number 5. Okay. And then we'll just kind of move, since these two are good, we'll move these a little bit. That's page 3. So this is one of those where I'm not sure I really want to cut the image up. So what I'm going to do is leave the first panel and then just put separate panels for the text. Like that. And right click, new Kindle panel. Just like that. Okay, so I'm going to have to do this bit by bit. The other thing when right clicking to bring up the menu, if you want to add a new panel, you've got to make sure that you right click outside of any existing panels to get the menu you want. If I were to right click on this text box while it's still inside this panel, I get this menu instead, and that's not very helpful. So we've got another one here that needs to be split. We bring bring that in, nope, don't delete. Set the zoom, create a new Kindle panel, and zoom in like that. And then I'm going to move that one up. These two worked out fine, so we'll keep these. Okay, this page created the panels right, so we just kind of move it subtle to make sure that they register right. I think this will be another one where I grab separate panels. For the text while leaving the overall picture intact. Now, when you put the cursor over the edge of the box, you know how we got the horizontal arrows at the corner allows you to resize, and that plus sign on the side, if you left click and hold, that lets you move the box as is. So we just put it up there and then resize it like that. This will be a case where I split this up into 3. Set zoom level. I can go new Kindle panel, we'll just put the text in its own little bubble. Move it up. Whoops. And we're going to overlap the text just a little bit. And 8. So we resize that. Set zoom level. Resize. This up to number 2. And see, here's an interesting one where for some reason it decided to create the panels overlapped anyway. So I think, oops, we created a panel. Because of how this worked out, I'm going to put that little text bubble in its own. 3, 4, 5. And then resize. Resize. And I think I'm going to split this one. Okay, that works. And we add a Kindle panel there. And yeah, you have to get these right, because once you finalize the book and you take it into your Kindle app, it'll do this on the Kindle app as well as here in Comic Creator. It's not something that's going to work itself out unless you go in and play with this. Create new panels. That's number 2, and we will create a panel. It was probably in one of the earliest videos for Shrimp of the House Showtime, where I talked about how I create pages with these sort of boring square blocks instead of trying to get artsy. sometimes you'll see in a comic where the panel will, like one of the borders, the border of the panel will go like diagonally across the page or something like that. And, this is why we do it, because I'm sort of, it's because I'm thinking about these panels and, trying to, um, trying to create some, it's because once you create the panels and zoom in, everything's going to be square and boxy anyway. So you don't really need to get artsy with the layout when the panel view is going to ruin that anyway. And now that I'm thinking, did I? Okay. So I haven't saved in a few pages. Let's save, and we go. Set zoom level. Okay, new Kindle panel. And I'm just going to encompass all of this because, again, it doesn't need to be, there's nothing artistic about panel placement, panel size, etc. This is just all intended to help the reader um, enjoy the work. There's another panel, I like it, so we'll sort of encompass the whole picture and then put the text separately. Oops. Just like that. Me too, so we'll set zoom level. And of course, because this becomes so rote and this gets to be tedious, your mind just sort of goes on autopilot after a while. Um, so that's why, before you upload this to Amazon, you'll want to open it in your Kindle app, on either on your tablet or your computer, and just run through the entire book to make sure that the panels are in order and that the zoom levels are all where you want them to be. That's where you zoom in on the first panel and then just use the scroll mouse to move from one to the other all the way up to the end of the book. Because it never fails on the first pass. Some of these panels I forget to reorder. Some of them I forget to change the zoom when I make them smaller like this. So we go 14, and we just do this. Set zoom level. Once you get into a groove, it just becomes kind of second nature. But it's like, even though you set these panels, you've got to manipulate each and every one, even if you end up with a page that's fine from its appearance. If like Kindle Comic Creator did a good job in detecting your panels, like here, still got to come in and just make a subtle change. And I'm going to create a panel here for this one, page 16. Oops. Bring that up to 2. And I think I can box this into 1. Zoom level, let's see. Yep. Um, 4. I think this one I'm going to split into 3. I've got no real rule for how I decide to do this. It's just all in how I feel from one page to the next. So sometimes if I've got the text, if I've got the images on the edge and the text in the middle, like this one, sometimes I'll encompass it into the panel for one image or the other. Other times I'll give it its own panel. I have no real rule for it. It's all in like how it looks. So, with this one, it feels to me like it makes sense to just lump it together. Here, this one, it seems a little big to do that with, so I'll like create a separate panel for the text there. And new script at 18. This is one we'll cut in half. And one thing too about the panels is sometimes it lets you tell the story in a slightly different way than it might appear on page. So what you can do is is instead of like I'm doing and lumping everything together, what you can do is give each and every word bubble and text box its own um, bubble. So that's page 19. Let me go up an example of what I'm about to talk about here. But so here on these two panels, it's every time I read this, my eye instantly goes to this text box. No. I'm trying to think. So there's two ways of sort of looking at this. Your eye could go to this text box first before reading his word bubble and then moving over here. Or, you could end up coming down to this panel starting with um, his his bubble and then coming up here to read this. And each version, each way has the potential of telling the story a different way. there may be no right or wrong way. Maybe I as the creator want you to read this before reading this, or maybe the other way around. I want you reading this before going to this. So what the panels will end up doing is allowing you to force the reader, if they're using the panel, if they're using the panels and just using the scroll button to move about, it'll it'll let you force the reader to read one or the other first, rather than leaving it up to the reader um, sort of go with what's natural when they're looking at the page as a whole. Since I didn't do it here, but I think there's been one or two instances in my entire catalog where I've sort of intentionally um, created separate panels for that purpose, to sort of force you to read it a certain way. Let's see, we were at page 19, right? Where's 19? Yep, okay, so we go to 20. And we just manipulate these. So, if you're reading my stories, you might think all I'm doing is just creating some fun pictures, putting together with text. Oops. Basically just creating something fun and silly. There's actually a lot of thought I put into this. Oops. There's actually, like, even from the very beginning, there's a lot of thought into sort of how these projects are sort of formatted, how they work out. Whoops. Here's an example of where I almost forgot to reorder these. But believe me, I would have caught it. I would have caught it when I put it in my Kindle app. Oops, here we go. So, basically when reordering these, you always want to make sure the panel encompasses what you want it to encompass. You want to make sure, especially if you get something that's a little wider than normal, you want to make sure that so let's say I want to make that my panel. I set zoom level at 150. I want to make sure this one's a little wider than I'm used to, so I want to make sure that when I zoom it, it'll fit on screen. If, let's say for whatever reason I have to take it out there. Oh no, he's still on screen. Oh no, okay. So if you notice over here, the edge of this panel is getting cut off. You see how if you look at the door, there's a board there and a board there. Whoops. But when I zoom in, this board gets cut in half and the other board is missing because this panel is zoomed in too big. So that's where that'll be the rare occasion where I kind of zoom into 125 instead, and that panel would fit. But since I don't need to go that big, we'll go back to 150 and I'll put the panel back to what I want. And then we create that panel. Oops, I don't have the, shoot, there we go. Okay, see, I almost forgot this one. To reorder that one. And that gets me through the first part. Here's the cover for part 2. So I think that about covered everything. I think that covered about what I need to as far as creating the panels. So I'm not going to force you to sit here and watch me play with the panels for another 40 minutes or whatever for the other 75 pages. I'm going to, I'll cut out here. um, do the panels off screen, and I'll come back when I've got the whole book, the panel set up for the whole book. Okay, and here we are. um, the panels are set up for the whole piece now, and suppose you want to swap out one of the pages. Let's say um, while going through here, there was one page I wanted to make a slight change to. So suppose you're putting your book together and you realize you made a mistake after going through all this trouble. So I take the page I want to swap out. I come to the page I want to swap out. I go from Panel Manager, I click Image Manager, and then I click on the page and I hit Replace Image. And it brings me to my main folder, and this was in Book 3. So we just come in here, and it is page 3. So I'll just double click and swap it. And now I'll just come in and adjust the panel to fit the change I made. And that's it. Just Image Manager, click page, and replace image. And that's all you have to do. Just make sure if the new panels are a different size, you adjust the panels. But now that is done, let's save. Now if you notice over here in my sort of list of pages, it's just numbered everything from page 1 to page 100. And when I generate the book, it's going to generate the table of contents based on these headings. And I don't exactly want to call this page 1 because that's not very helpful. I'm sure there's got to be a way to generate the table of contents with just the individual parts instead of with each and every page, but I haven't come across it. So I'm not the expert in sort of generating a compact table of contents, but what I do want to do is make sure that each page is labeled here in a way that's helpful to the reader if by some chance they want to use the table of contents. So I click on the first page and I want to mark this as part 1. So I'm just going to come up here where it says name. Oops. Okay, let's go delete and backspace, and we'll just rename that part 1, and then I'll hit enter to make the change take place here. And then I've got to rename all the pages. Backspace, page 1, enter. This one's going to be page 2, enter. Page 3, enter. Page 4, enter. 5, enter. 6, enter. Now, if I don't want to do that, I can double click on the page here and it'll bring it up here, and I can change it here. 10. Whoops. And I'm messing this up. Okay. Try something new and mess it up. So this is actually page 7. This is page 8. Page 9, and so on. But I'm going to change it up here. Backspace 10. Backspace 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. Yeah. It's fun with numbers. Watch me count. 18. 19. 20. Whoops. 20. That didn't take it. No. I forgot to hit enter. 21. 22. 23. You make sure you hit enter or it won't take. 24. And then we come here. We're going to call this one part 2. Enter. And then basically I'm going to start over page 1, page 2, and so on. Page 3. I always do it at this stage because I tried it once. I tried it when I started the project before generating all the panels. I think, once I loaded all the images, then renumbered them, and then went ahead and did the panel view. And it just, for some reason, would not take the change in the page numbers until I was finished with the panel view, with setting up the panels. So it would just end up resetting all the page numbers, and then I'd number them again, it would reset them again. It just wasn't working. I think even just to test it out, I think I had even renumbered the pages and then generated the book without messing with panels first, and it still wouldn't do it. For some reason it would only accept the change after I generated all the panels. So I don't even bother doing this first. I always do it after. Here we are on part 3. Three. 2. 3. Page 7. 8. So this just becomes, oops, what did I do? Page 8. Page 9. See, it just kind of, this just becomes kind of automatic, and you just gloss it over. So at least if I end up sort of misnumbering the pages and not really don't really pick it up, I've only got like the 24 pages to go through to correct it before I get to the next part and the numbering starts over again. So if I get to the next cover or the end of the book and I haven't hit page 24 yet, or I'm suddenly at a page higher than 24, whoops, I don't have much of the story to go through to correct it. Page 24, now this is part 4. Okay, page 1, and this is going to be the last part. So watch me count up to 24 again. Yay! 11. This part isn't, it's putting the book together isn't really hard. It's just, it can take a couple of hours depending on how long your story is. This is only 4 parts with 100 pages, counting the covers. And it was sort of the first part went a little slow because I was kind of walking you guys through it, but once you get the hang of it, it's just like I said, the most boring part. And there's 24. So we've got the pages numbered. Let's save that. File save. And you were seeing it crash at the beginning. When I cut out to do the panels, it hasn't crashed since. So it's like I said, I've only seen it. I only see it crash when I'm loading the images. But now that we've got the panel set and my pages renumbered for the table of contents, what I'm going to go is up here and go build. Click that. I'm going to build and preview. And now it's going to just create my book. This will take a few minutes. This is sort of usually one of those steps where you go off and do something else and come back to it. So I'm going to cut out here, and I will come back and show you the finalized book. And here is the sort of generated ebook. When it builds, it builds the Mobi file. It'll go ahead and open the previewer so you can see it here, what it's going to look like. And as you can see, we can check the panels, and we can use the button here to go to the next panel. You can just go panel, 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 panel. If I close this, I went ahead and opened it in, oh, or I didn't. Okay, let's go over here. And where are we? Over here in book. These are all the files that it saved. Here's the Mobi file. if I go ahead and double click that, okay. Here it is. You see, here's my ebook. So if I open up the table of contents, as you can see, here's the table of contents with all the pages. So I can go to part 2, for instance. There's the second part. We can go to individual pages and go back to, here's the cover, part 1. Okay. If I click on the panel, oops, and then I can just scroll with the mouse wheel, the wheel on the mouse. I can just scroll through and go from panel to panel. This is why you want to make sure the panels are in the proper order. Here in the panel manager. And like I showed you over here, it created, this is the Mobi file. This is what you're going to upload to Amazon, the Kindle content. As you can see, because of the pictures, it's a rather large file. So, but anyway, save that and close that because I don't need it. But anyway, that's how you that's how you go from this collection of images that I've been creating with you guys in the last 2 months to this ebook that you can buy on Amazon. It's so if any of you guys want to go out there and do this, that's how you do it. And I don't know, I'm just going on here, so I'm gonna thank you for watching, and I'm gonna log out here.